Hey guys,
Yeah?
I was thinking, you know what would be really good?
What?
Theme music.
Well, funny you should say that.
Yeah.
Hello there, world, wherever you are, and welcome once again to the There Will Be Geek podcast. I'm Mike, and with me on my right there is...
Shonny!
And on my left we have...
I'm Cav.
And here we are again to delight your entertaining ears and delight your entertaining brains and generally give you as much new and interesting fact and nonsense for you to be able to discuss and digest. First of all, for this week's episode, our Thimble of Win. Cav, where are you this week?
Well, my Thimble of Win for this week is Grand Admiral fucking Thrawn. Now, we're talking about ComicCon this week, but the other big convention that came up recently was Star Wars Celebration, where they announced the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is one of the most popular characters from the original run of the Star Wars Expanded Universe. He's an Imperial Grand Admiral. His thing is he studies the culture and art of other cultures to work out their weak spots, which is a great conceit for a villain. Was a great character, didn't last very long, and has always been sort of, I guess, kind of a touchstone character for a lot of fans. And now they're bringing him into the new canon and new continuity. He's coming to Star Wars Rebels, which comes very recommended if you haven't seen it. And also a new book coming next year from Timothy Zahn, the author who created him. So, very exciting stuff. Hopefully it turns out all right. And something that a lot of people have been waiting a long time for. So, all cool.
Fantastic. And Shonny, how about you?
The thing that's getting me excited about Comic-Con is the trailers that are obviously coming out, but two in particular. I'm a huge horror movie fan. I love them. I try to watch as many as I can, even like the really horrible, like we're going below B grade, maybe D grade, F grade, H, M, whatever. The worst of the worst, I still love them. This week I've seen the trailers for Split, which looks very interesting. It's got everyone's favorite Professor X, James McAvoy, in it. As a gentleman who has 23 split personalities, which is also cool because 23 is my favorite number. The way he plays it looks actually very interesting and not campy and over the top, which you sometimes get in other movies where they do split personalities. Actually seems kind of terrifying the way that he's presenting himself as all these different characters and very convincing. But the one that's really got me excited is the Blair Witch. Well, it's actually Blair Witch now. When this was in production, it was currently known as The Woods, but it was revealed at Comic-Con as to be the sequel to the Blair Witch Project, which came out in 1999. Now, there has already been a sequel, The Book of Shadows, which came out a year after, which was a terrible movie by most people's standards. I like to watch it every so often. It's got boobs, but Blair Witch actually takes place 15 years after the original movie, and it continues on with that story as Heather's younger brother, James, goes out into the woods trying to find her. So I'm so excited about this because there's going to be more people talking about Blair Witch, more theories, more investigations I can do. I'm just so excited.
Cool. That sounds like it's going to be a whole heap of fun for you then come September.
Oh, yeah.
Well, for me, the Thimble of Win this week has to be the return to our screens, or at least the screens in the UK, of Robot Wars. Now, some of you may not necessarily be familiar with this, but anyone over a certain age in the UK will be only too familiar with this. This used to go out on BBC Two I think Thursdays or Friday nights around about 6 o'clock in the evening. And essentially what it was a small purpose-built arena where people would do battle with robots. Not necessarily robots on legs or anything, but basically kind of motorized kind of robots that would hack and slash each other to pieces. There would also be house robots where they would have to battle against for various different things. And it was all overseen initially by Jeremy Clarkson, then presented by Craig Charles for the rest of its run from 98 to 2004, and commentated on by the BBC's Jonathan Pearce, who is also a football commentator. And to be honest with you, it was always a whole heap of fun. It was a big kind of mainstay for an awful lot of geeks growing up in the UK. I mean, I was in my 20s when it first started, but there's a lot of people who have a lot of fondness for the show. And now it's back. And it's available. And Dara O'Brien is presenting it. Here, the scienciness in his comedy. And I'm very, very, very pleased with that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the first episode.
I would just like to point out to our listeners that when Mike says football, he means soccer.
Yes.
Not footy.
Yes, football, because there's feet and a ball. And now we go straight on to our main area for today, which is going to be our review of all of the various different things that were released recently at San Diego Comic-Con. That was, I believe, last week. We've got a whole bunch of things to get through, and what we're going to try and do is we're going to go through as many of the things that we can think of that would be interesting as possible. I'm probably going to be avoiding returning TV series because for the most part, we already know what's going on with that. So this is really kind of a look at the new stuff that's coming up and what our thoughts are going to be on those. And we start that with Justice League. Cav, what were your thoughts on the Justice League trailer?
My first thought was, given all the fallout from Batman versus Superman about the tone, they obviously looked at Suicide Squad and went, humor and rock. I think we can do something with that. Because it's very much, they took it straight from the mold set by those Suicide Squad trailers. Yeah, it looks cool. I'm still a little worried about the Zack Snyder element, but it seems cool. Jason Momoa looks great.
I gotta say, I mean, bear in mind, regular listeners to this podcast will know that we were not kind to Batman vs. Superman on our very first episode. And honestly, the problem I've got with this is we've been burned before. This does look fantastic. It looks like there's humor. It looks like there's really well done dialogue. It looks sassy. It looks snappy. It looks fun. It looks like Affleck is really kind of embracing the role and getting into that very nicely. But the problem is, we kind of thought that Batman versus Superman had potential, and look what happened there.
Yeah, it's I want to know more about the story. I want to know more about the script. Because that's where the dumbness seems to come in, and we haven't got much of that yet.
I'm already excited for it, but that's basically just because of Jason Momoa. I'm like, oh my god, my Rocky Lord is back and looks fantastic.
Good, the shot with them walking around chugging out of the bottle of whiskey. Or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I just have this vision. I just want Justice League just to be him and drunken, pissed off Jeremy Irons Alfred. Just on the piss for the whole movie, taking the piss out of Batman.
That'd be great.
That would be a lot of fun.
Master Bruce wet the bed till he was 23, They call me Aquaman. Shut up, you guys. I hate you.
Oh my goodness.
Actually, funnily enough, this whole first section is going to be quite a bit DC heavy, with more of which in a few moments. But yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that, Shani. There are a lot of people who are going to be going out there purely because of the fact that Jason Momoa is in it.
He could be sitting there picking his nose for 3 hours. I'd still go and watch the damn thing.
Zack Snyder, there's a lot of slow motion nose picking.
Yeah, zoom in and some artistic music. All good.
But
Bit of speed run for the flick. It could be quite beautiful, actually.
It could be. I also was very impressed by the Flash as well. That looks cool. The way that I wasn't sure if they needed the electricity kind of around him when he was just moving that little bit. I thought that'd be more of a when he got up more speed kind of thing, not like an every time.
Was I the only one to notice that whole bit when they slowed down time for the Flash sequence? It reminded me a lot of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Oh, I've tried to block that out as much as I can.
See, I like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. They were fun.
No, the first two were really good.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, the only thing I really liked about it was James Franco. That man is a gift from heaven.
Mm-hmm.
He does no wrong.
Well, I'm sure we can revisit him a little bit later on.
Would you
further
watch
down the
him
line.
picking his nose?
Oh, yeah.
Here's the thing for you. How about the idea of Jason Momoa and James Franco sitting on stage picking each other's noses?
I need a minute.
Okay, I before we entirely gross out all of our listeners, I think we need to move on to the other DC sections of this. Now, the other big DC trailers from this were Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad in terms of the live action stuff. The Suicide Squad, we've been seeing the drip feed for that for a while. This one actually wasn't as good as the Bohemian Rhapsody trailer. There are misgivings I have about Suicide Squad, but I'm going to come back to those later. What were your thoughts, Shawnee?
Again, I'm still excited to see it. It seems like the trailers are pretty much doing the same thing over and over again, just showing us more action shots. When it started, I was like, oh, because of the music that was playing, I was like, oh, this is going to get more into like their personalities and their tragic backstories and whatever. But no, it didn't really. I was like, oh, okay, it's just another same trailer, nothing too good. But I think that's not bothering me, but the thing that I find interesting is that they're not showing a lot of Joker and Jared Leto in it at all. Like, I suspected, like, as I got closer, they would start showing more of the Joker because that's one of the primary characters that people are invested in, especially with Harlequin. But I'm just not seeing.
There is a large chunk of. I think he's being saved.
Yeah.
Now, there's one of two things. Either his performance is dreadfully underwhelming, so they don't want to put people off, or else it's utterly beguiling and amazing, and they really want to be able to save it as much as possible for impact upon release.
True. Or there could be just 3 minutes of him in there, and they're just misleading people. Isn't Batman supposed to be in this?
There was a presence of Batman in this trailer, and he's been in one or two of the other ones.
Okay.
But it's a blink and you miss him.
I did notice with this one as well, they're finally bringing out Will Smith more.
Yes.
They're finally making with the big Willie style.
Yeah.
I mean, he pretty much seems to just be Will Smith doing Will Smith.
And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I mean, my biggest problem with this at the moment, and this is not to denigrate Margot Robbie as an actor because she's really, really good. She knows what she's doing very well and she's highly talented. But everything so far of the trailers has basically been presenting her as Murder Barbie. And I have issues with the fact that she seems to be there to be a pretty face and a butt. And I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that as an idea, because she's more than that, and the character, more to the point, has historically always been more than that. We'll see how it actually goes. That could just literally be the editing of the trailers.
Speaking of lumps of plastic, though, hey, I mean, look, at least Jai Courtney looks like he has a personality in this one, so there's that.
Yeah. And speaking of pretty face, we come to Wonder Woman. Now, I actually thought that was a very strong trailer. Again, Wonder Woman, that has less to do with Zack Snyder. That's somebody else who's making the whole movie, and frankly, it's starting to look really, really promising. I think the switch to the First World War was a good call, because there's a lot you can do with that, particularly with regards to some of the settings. And the action looks good. The dialogue looks excellent. A lot of it looks like it's been really well thought out, and I am quietly excited and looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think it's looking really promising. I've always had a bit of a thing for the whole sort of World War One era, probably because we had to study it at school. And you don't see it in movies very often, and I think that marks it out as something that's really different and very promising looking. I mean, Gal Gadot was great in Batman vs Superman. As little as we saw her, she looks like she'd be really fun to watch. So fingers crossed and everything.
Every time I see her outfit, I just think it's like a more colorful Xena outfit. I don't know why. I know it's like a Wonder Woman costume. Like, it's always been that kind of thing. But I think the materials that they're using for it, like, it looks very leathery and, strappy, and the toned down colors of it, like the muted tones of it, it just makes me think of Xena for some reason.
I think there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, there's a large chunk of that's going to be kind of unavoidable now, because you can't really have the kind of the bright spandexy Linda Carter of the Wonder Woman of the 70s.
And it's mythological armor. I mean, there's only so much you can really do with it.
Yeah. Well, apparently she can break things with her butt in it, which I thought was kind of ridiculous.
And for our last of the DC section of this podcast, if you will, I think we're going to be dealing with what is probably going to be the best of the damn lot of them. The one that looks utterly amazing, and I am really looking forward to it. And that's the Lego Batman movie. How good is that trailer?
That was the first time we rewatched the trailers just before, but that was the first time I'd actually seen this, and I wasn't actually aware it was existing or coming out. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll see how it is, because the Lego movie that came out a few years ago, I was a bit umming and ahhing about it. All I really liked was, the Batman song, darkness, no parents. But this, looks like something I could actually get into and enjoy.
I think I was a big fan of the Lego movie, but I could understand the problems with it. The main thing I really liked about the Lego movie was the style and the way it was put together as an animation, because it was incredibly clever and it took into account the medium and so on and so forth. This one just looks like a whole heap of dumb, stupid, silly fun, but really cleverly put together.
Mm-hmm.
And Ralph Fiennes as Alfred. I mean, that's a good casting there as well. I think it's so far it's looking very, very, very good, and I can't wait for this one.
I kind of love the take on Batman as just this egotistical dick.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's especially like coming off the Christopher Nolan movies where he was sort of very much evangelized.
But still,
it is kind of refreshing. Did you notice as well the license plate on the Batmobile?
No.
Batitude.
Oh God.
That shouldn't be great, but it is.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Will Arnett as well, so I'm going to check this out.
Yet another trailer we were looking at was for Kong, Skull Island. I think the thing with this one, this surprised me, because this kind of came out of nowhere. If you remember a few years ago, there was Peter Jackson's King Kong.
Oh, they had Jack Black in it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And this is clearly a follow-up to that, but it was one of those ones where it's not a direct sequel, it's several years later, and it's interesting that it's kind of gone somewhere different with this, because obviously you have the King Kong, and it was all very much it was in the 30s, it's the kind of a remake of the classic movie, and I kind of understand. This is taking this to another level. This is kind of more back in your territory of your traditional monster movie.
It kind of, because it's set in the 70s, it's kind of almost rebooted the 70s King Kong movie that everyone's always hated. So it's like rebooting, looping in on itself.
So this one is in the 70s, because I got the impression from this it was more modern, but I suppose with
sure
those...
it was the 70s, yeah.
Well, I suppose with the Hueys, it does look like it's going to be the 70s. It's hard to tell from first sight, but it is interesting. It's a much more modern take on Kong, and essentially the principle is there is an island in the middle of nowhere which a bunch of people are going to go and have a look at because it's been fairly uninhabited, and they think, oh, this is fine and this is different and it's going to be just a nice little survey mission, then everything goes wrong.
I got confused by it because they have, what's his face? You know who I'm talking about.
Samuel L. Jackson?
Nope.
John Goodman.
That's it. He was saying about he was trying to prove the existence of monsters. And I was like, okay, cool, you can do that. But why the heck do you have a bunch of army dudes with you? Like, you could just do a normal expedition out to an island and, get some photos or some footage or video footage of this giant creature. Because if this was in the 70s, there's not a lot of, internet, Photoshop, all of that kind of hoaxy stuff. So you could take a team out, take some photos, get the footage, and then nick off. I don't understand why there's all these army dudes there and they're attacking.
I think this is partly because of the fact that this may well be somewhere that's in a particular demilitarized zone. He may well be someone who's been a scientist who works with the military, and that's how he's managed to get access to this place or something along those. Basically, this is very much in that. It is your traditional monster movie. It is people go somewhere with a bunch of some are civilians, some are soldiers. There's a big fight. Suddenly, there's all monsters to worry about. I mean, this could be Predator, this could be Alien, this could be any number of Universal movies from years gone by. I'm fine with that because again, Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson, Tom Hiddleston, John Goodman.
Did I see Forrest Whitaker in it?
I don't think you did see Forrest Whitaker in there.
And you may notice as well that Tom Hiddleston is now playing the stoical action guy with the gun.
Yeah, that was
Hollywood
weird.
leveled up.
That was
I
weird.
know. I'm kind of pleased for that. Well, we all know the rumors of what his next big major role might end up being, and I, for one, am perfectly happy with the idea of him playing Bond.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Taylor Swift's new ex-boyfriend and
Oh, well,
the
there's
basis
that.
of all her new album.
Oh, that's the perk he gets from Hollywood leveling up.
I wouldn't call that a perk at all.
Well, I guess depends on how you
You'd
look
have
at
to
it.
put, yeah, okay.
Okay, moving on to our next section on Comic-Con. I think this next section could easily be described as fantasy and mysticism, because we've got 3 upcoming movies which all look like they're going to be dealing with that to one degree or another, and the first of which is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yeah, it looks. I think it was interesting. I like Harry Potter. I'm not a major fan, but I like the idea of having this historical story and kind of turning it into an immigrant story. It actually reminded me a lot of the comic series Fables, or there was adapted to a really good video game, The Wolf Among Us. And the sort of the concept of that was fairy tale and mythological characters who have sort of fled the mythological world and live in this sort of little suburb in Brooklyn. And this seems to be very much a similar idea. And hey, you got Colin Farrell being a wizard.
Yeah, I was not
That's pretty
expecting
cool.
that. I was very impressed. He looks very good in this role. I mean, Eddie Redmayne also looks excellent, but generally speaking, it's really pretty. I mean, it kind of helps that within the Harry Potter universe, as shown in cinemas at the very least, all of the technology is very much kind of early 20th century, 20s, 30s, kind of like Art Deco, Art Nouveau, that kind of whole period of time. That if you think of architecture in and around London around about that period of time, with all of the tiling and so on and so forth, then this fits with that very nicely, because it's clearly that kind of time period that we're looking at. I also, one of my favourite things is they're not muggles anymore. In America, they're no-mages.
Yeah, that's the one thing I picked up
yeah.
as well. It's just saying no magic. I'm like, what? Wait, no, aren't they supposed to be muggles? I'm like, oh, wait, maybe this is what they were called in America, or maybe
Well,
this is what they were called before they decided on
And-
muggles.
Apparently, that's how it works. Every different country has their own different version of no-mages or muggles or what have you. I'd really love to know what the Australian
Oh,
version
yeah,
is.
I know. What would it be?
Muggos or something.
Yeah,
Monks.
probably muggos or something. I was about to say something, but then I realised that I cannot use that word in a podcast.
Okay. Well, we will try and avoid that, considering some of the language we've already used. That's going to be pretty fucking bad. Okay, yeah, and look, it's very pretty. And the other thing with this is it kind of looks like this is a whole series that we're potentially launching here. Now, as far as I know, the book it's based on was only one book, but we'll have to see. I mean, this had the feeling of a franchise starter or a franchise restarter of some description. I don't know. I will be very, very pleased to see what happens with it. It has potential, and it is very, very pretty.
I'm interested to see the actual mystical or mythical, whatever you want to call them, beasts, because that's one of the main things in Harry Potter that I liked, because I've always been interested in, fairy tale creatures or Greek mythology creatures and things like that. So I'd be more than happy to have like a whole series of these and see the different kinds of magical creatures from around the world, and what kind of ones do they have over in Africa or up in Poland or
Or here in
where
Australia.
yeah, or here in
yeah.
Australia. Like that is more intriguing to me than an actual story about wizards. And speaking of other things that look very pretty,
Yes, the next thing we were going to be getting onto was King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, starring Sons of Anarchy, Queer as Folk, and Biker Grove's very own Charlie Hunnam, with some small traces in there of his original Geordie accent, if you know what you're listening for. I thought this looked fun.
Yeah, it looks like a real laugh. I reckon it could either be Guy Ritchie's return to form, or it could just be a horrible exercise in self-imitation. But I think there's enough there that it does look interesting. But the only thing that worries me is, look, it's a Guy Ritchie movie. Where is Vinnie Jones?
Well, in
We
fairness,
need the Vin.
Vinnie Jones wasn't in Sherlock, and that actually worked out rather well. The Sherlock Holmes movie. I like.
I'll let it go once, but that was the one time. I'm not doing it again.
Actually, you know what? The other one. You've got to have one of two things in a Guy Ritchie movie to make it work. Either Vinnie Jones or Jason Statham.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take Jason Statham happily.
Well, to me, this movie, it's not the type of movie that I generally go for. Like, I'm not into the more medieval kind of movies, although I do really like Game of Thrones. But when I was watching this, all I could think of was, oh, this kind of looks like a mashup of A Knight's Tale and Lord of the Rings.
This is the Arthurian legend, so there's going to be a large amount of that sort of thing going to happen.
Yeah.
And the fact what you've mentioned there in terms of you've got like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, they are two areas from this genre that really kind of set the bar with anyone else doing something around about that sort of period of time or that sort of style.
Well, it was more the fighting. Like, they had that giant scene where looked like two different sides were clashing on top of like a wall kind of thing. I was like, oh, that reminds me of this from Lord of the Rings, and I was like, eh.
And in fairness as well, I mean, half the Game of Thrones cast is in there. The guy who plays Roose Bolton was there. We know that Aidan Gillen's going to be there.
Woo, Littlefinger!
But we also get Eric Banner in there. Jude Law is going to be in there. This is looking like it's got quite a good cast. And I'm actually quite pleased for Charlie Hunnam because he's somebody who, whilst those of you who've ever watched Sons of Anarchy will be aware that Charlie Hunnam appears to only be capable of producing 4 different facial expressions, he is somebody who has a great physicality to him. He has a lot of charm and a lot of charisma, and he's an interesting performer who, whilst he's done the leading man thing, has never really kind of taken that next step up to stardom. I mean, given the fact that you've got people who are doing the same sort of thing, and I would suggest not necessarily as accomplished, such as Gerard Butler, Charlie Hunnam has the potential to go really well. I mean, he did a very good job in the lead role in Pacific Rim, and I would be very interested to see how this one goes for him. And
unfortunately, another announcement coming from ComicCon is that he's not going to be in Pacific Rim 2.
I know, I was disappointed.
Which, look, doesn't need him necessarily, but kind of would have been nice.
I do love his physicality.
I'll bet you do.
But actually, I heard that he was either going to be, or he dropped out or something, that he was supposed to be the lead dude out of 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes, he was originally there. He was supposed to have been Christian Grey, and frankly, there's a bullet dodged, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about things that people tend to drool an awful lot over, the next thing we might get to is Doctor Strange and Bendy Dick Crumble Slatch.
Though, watching this trailer, that shirtless shot, I think now it has to be Shreddy Pecked Cumberbuff.
Yeah. Well, okay, Doctor Strange. This has been trailed for some time now. I've been seeing kind of filming shots and so on and so forth popping up on the internet for a while. Again, you've got your Benedict Cumberbatch, you've got Chiwetel Ejiofor, you've got Tilda Swinton.
Mads!
You've got Mads Mikkelsen, yes. And again, very good cast. And this is one of those ones where, again, there is an element of, we kind of know what we're getting here because we're in Marvel's hands, Marvel movie studio hands at least. And to an extent, there is a thing of thinking, well, you know what? They've pretty much hit fairly well with most of the previous adaptations. There's been stumbles here and there, but this kind of looks cool. And it's got a good cast, well shot, very pretty. Kind of reminded me of at least one other movie, though, just in the trailer.
Well, I think they sort of looked at Inception and went, nope, fuck you. We're going to out Inception your Inception. We're going to bend this city from 15 different directions at once. And I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about the film is the look of it.
Yeah.
There's lots of really wacky, out there visuals.
Yeah.
I do also like sort of Mads Mikkelsen seems to be in his death metal singer phase with the little bit of corpse paint he's got going on there.
Yeah, either that or he's been listening to the Winter Soldier for makeup tips.
Oh, goodness. Oh.
Okay. Finally, we are going to be getting onto TV stuff here. We've got, I think we'll start with the Marvel things, because there are more Marvel things coming from Netflix. Specifically, we saw we got a full trailer for Luke Cage. We got teasers for Iron Fist and The Defenders. What were your thoughts on Luke Cage and Iron Fist?
Luke Cage looks great. I love the concept of the teaser just being one extended fight scene. I'm pretty sure someone at Marvel must really love Oldboy, because there seems to be a rule with these Netflix shows. there must be one epic corridor fight in every show, which I have no problem with whatsoever. Iron Fist in Defenders, yeah, so what? I'm sure they'll be good, but neither of these teasers really had anything in it. It really just, I mean, Iron Fist was just a very, very brief summation of the concept of the show, and Defenders was really only there to say, look, we've got Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist all in the same show. That's all for now. So those two, not so interesting, but Luke Cage trailer was quite fun.
I will say this, for the Luke Cage trailer, the phrase that came into my head straight away was Terminator Shaft.
Yep.
For me, I'm not a huge TV person. Like, obviously, I watch some shows. Like, I like Orange is the New Black. Game of Thrones, obviously, I watch that all the time. But I can't sit down and watch TV like I used to. So I wasn't actually aware of these shows or what they're about. But looking at them, after the guys explained a little bit of it to me, I was like, okay, the Luke Cage seems kind of cool. It's just a normal dude who can take a whole heap of damage, beating up some other dudes. So, but it looked nice. And yeah, I didn't see any fault with it. If I knew more of the backstory, I could get into it. But that's on me for not actually watching it.
In fairness, one of the things I've really liked about the Netflix Marvel series has been they have been about very much normal people who can do extraordinary things, but they've always told the stories on a very small level. It's not been big world-saving or world-shattering events. It's been people dealing with stuff that's going on in and around their neighborhoods or their lives, and it's very much been a much more small scale, and as a result of which it's always been way more character driven and really well done character driven, and it explores the consequences of what happens for this. I mean, for example, without wishing to put any too many spoilers in here, with regards to Jessica Jones, there is a section of Jessica Jones where Luke Cage has been introduced, where they have to the characters have to try and give Luke Cage some medical treatment, some very urgent medical treatment. And if nothing can break his skin, how do you get things into his bloodstream?
Oh.
And it kind of goes from... So it was an interesting idea there.
Yeah.
So that was what I thought that looked good. Also, sticking with Marvel, but an entirely different species of Marvel, Legion. Now, Legion is coming up, I think, later this year, and this is the TV series for the X-Men, or the X-Men and the Mutants. And previously we've always seen with the X-Men, or certainly with the Bryan Singer movies, there was a big thing of the kind of the mutants being the metaphor for gay people, that thing of the other that is hidden in plain sight, that the people almost have to come out to do so. And so mutants have always been a good kind of way of being able to discuss that issue of otherness, that issues of being different but not necessarily appearing different, and so on and so forth. And in this case, I think there's an interesting take because it's going in for mental illness. Or at least the trailer seems to be very heavily leaning that way.
Yeah, it does seem interesting. I don't really know what to think. It seemed interesting. It felt to me conceptually, it maybe was a little all over the place, where you had the very intense-looking scenes with these sessions, they're sitting at the table and
a Bollywood dance-off.
Yeah, and then so there's a Bollywood dance-off, and you're going, what? I'm sure that makes sense in the context of an episode, but in a trailer, it's okay, we'll just see. But yeah, I mean, taking it more from the context of being like a mental illness I think is an interesting way to take it for sure. Apart from that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it makes me more excited, but I'm curious.
So are these already established mutants that are already a part of the X-Men world, or are these brand new mutants that are being created for this show?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I know that this is taking place in the universe of the X-Men, because this is something whereby, even in the trailer, the authority figures are acknowledging that mutants exist.
Yeah, and he's like, this is the most powerful one that we've seen or whatever.
So I don't know if this is a particular new one or an offshoot, but this is something we can do some further research in further down the line.
Okay, cool.
Also coming up in TV, and I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited. It's been, by the way, Thimble of Win previously. Really excited. American Gods! American Gods!
It does look very, very cool.
Oh, God. I bought this book on a whim many years ago when I was just kind of first starting to get into Neil Gaiman as a writer. And I think I was going on a journey somewhere and I needed something to read. And I devoured. It's one of those books that I reread at least once every year. It is beautiful. It is gorgeous. And it looks like it's being given proper treatment. The casting has been great so far.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Ian McShane in there. You've got...
You got a nice Aussie in Emily Browning.
Yep.
Lovely Aussie lass there who you may remember from like a series of unfortunate events. She was in Sucker Punch.
Crispin Glover's going to be in there.
Yeah.
Not present in the trailer, but Gillian Anderson is playing
That's
Media.
right, yeah.
Exactly, yes. And there's Peter Stormare as well, playing Chernobog, which does look really good.
I never know how to say his last name. I'm like, Stormare? I'm like, no, it's like Stormare.
Yeah. But the thing is, again, perfect casting as Chernobog. Really, really good casting for that. And there's so much about this, and I am ridiculously excited because this is a story that looks like it's being done well. Neil Gaiman's work is interesting, and the fact that he's finally started to do TV adaptations, this holds a lot of potential. And I mean, if this one works, for example, I'm also really excited about the future for Good Omens, if that ever happens. But yeah, I mean, the trailer looks pretty. I've been seeing this for a couple of weeks now, and I keep on watching it, and I'm more than happy to do so. I can't wait for this to turn up next year.
From what I've seen on the trailer, I am interested in it. And it may just be because of Crispin Glover, maybe, who knows, but I am willing to give this a bit of a shot.
Sure.
I've got the book on my must-read properly list. I got about halfway through it about 3 or 4 years ago. But at the time, I was having sleep apnea problems, and it made it difficult to read. I only got about halfway through and never finished it. So I really need to read it again, because the half I read was really good. So I kind of need to get on there.
Now, we generally haven't been speaking much about returning shows because there's a lot of various different ones, but this one I thought was notable, which was Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Oh.
Ash vs. the Evil Dead. I really, really, really enjoyed the utter stupidity and dumbness of the first one. I mean, Bruce Campbell is one of those figures who can't necessarily do no wrong, but he's not far off it. And it is a lot of fun, silliness, schlock, horror, big, dumb, horror action. Mm-hmm. Love it.
I love Bruce Campbell's broomstick. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, the first series is great. It was Evil Dead 4. For years and years we've heard they were going to make it and they weren't going to make it, and then Bruce Campbell started getting old and it looked like there was no chance. They did the remake of the first one a couple of years ago. It was all right, but not anything really to write home about. And I just love it. Like, Sam Raimi came back and this series was the actual Evil Dead 4 that we were waiting for. So, yeah, more the merrier.
Plus, also, I mean, one of the guys who's already been widely trailed is going to be appearing in the new series, cast as Ash's dad, Lee Majors.
Lee Majors, yeah, that is great. No idea if he can still act. I mean, he could barely act back in the 70s, but it's still fucking cool.
It's had like 40 years to get some acting lessons, so...
Yeah.
That's true, yeah.
See, my first introduction to Lee Majors wasn't the $6 Million Man. I don't quite remember that, although I'm aware of him doing it. It was always The Fall Guy.
Yeah, there was Fall Guy as well. Fuck.
No idea.
The Fall Guy was basically a show where Lee Majors was playing a stuntman who also worked as a bounty hunter.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it was one of those kind of, you know, those Stephen J. Cannell shows like Battlestar Galactica or The A-Team or Knight Rider.
Yeah.
Whenever you watch them, they always feel this kind of the same. They've got the same structure. It was one of those shows.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's quite a good little show. Moving on from there, we have 2 more entries on the TV section. Son of Zorn. Now, Son of Zorn does looks interesting, to say the least, because I don't think anyone else has done this. Could you tell us a little bit about Son of Zorn, please, Cav?
All right, so basically the premise is Zorn is sort of an animated fantasy hero who comes home to visit his family and his old friends who are all human. Think Roger Rabbit, a cross between Wizards of Oz, an Australian series from earlier this year about a fantasy wizard living in Footscray. Imagine that cross with Roger Rabbit. So you have Zorn, who's this fully animated character, voiced by Jason Sudeikis.
Yes.
And he's hanging out with live-action people, like his ex-wife and his old best mate. And
he looks very, very He-Man.
Very
Yeah,
He-Man,
like
yes.
it's 2D. It's not like any kind of 3D CGI kind of thing. It literally looks like someone has cut out a cartoon man and stuck it.
Yeah, it's like 2D cell animation.
And on top of that, you've also got the whole thing of he's very much a kind of, think of the ultimate complete jerk fantasy warrior, and that setting in like normal day-to-day kind of Orange County and Los Angeles and what have you.
Suburbia.
I believe one of the big sort of things, standout moments from the trailer was him yelling at a waitress, saying, "Food hall!"
That was kind of funny. But to me, I don't think this is going to be one that I follow up on. Like, I thought, yeah, it's kind of funny, but I don't think I'd be able to put up with it for multiple stories or episodes.
Yeah, it's like the trailer's a really good joke. I guess what remains to be seen is where they take the joke.
Yeah.
And talking of which, we also have for our final bit of the TV section, Dirk Gently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Cav has issues with Dirk Gently.
Look, I mean, it's all too easy in this day and age to look at a trailer. I mean, especially a teaser, which is meant to be a little sort of glimpse at something, and run to the wrong conclusions and get all worked up and, maybe be a bit unfairly sort of hard on a thing based on a tiny glimpse. But having said that, fuck this. No, Max Landis. No. Now, I'll cop to a bit of bias on this one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, first of all, I'm a huge Douglas Adams fan.
Yes.
He's always been my favorite author. I also played Dirk Gently in a stage production of the first book back in Perth a few years ago. So I have a bit of a connection to this character. I have a lot of time for this character, and he's not... I didn't think the previous BBC series handled him very well.
That was done a few years ago with Stephen Mangan in the lead role.
Yeah, I didn't think a lot of that, and this trailer just screams wrong. Basically, the idea of Dirk Gently is for those of you who don't know, he's a private eye who basically works on with an understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. He has a holistic detective agency. He believes that basically everything is connected in the universe and everything leads to everything else. He's actually a completely shit detective, but he just sort of bumbles along in these insane situations, and somehow because of this understanding he has of the universe, he always finds the right direction, even though he's a bit of a pain in the arse and a complete schlub. What they've done is they seem to have turned this character who's meant to be unlikable, who's meant to be someone people have to put up with, and the new version just comes across as some guy who's just really piped because he's got a good click count on his latest article for fucking Pitchfork. It's hipstered up Dirk Gently. There's lots of flipping and jumping around. It feels like they've tried to Scott Pilgrim Dirk Gently.
There is something to be said that Elijah Wood is involved here, but at the same time, I kind of with you on this one, Cav, but partly also for different reasons. I'm also a massive fan of Douglas Adams. I think we both grew up with his work and were very, very, very influenced by him. But he is also Dirk Gently. The book itself, the original story had most of its foundations in a Doctor Who story called Shada, which was supposed to have been the season climax for one of the season when Douglas Adams was script editor for Doctor Who, or effectively the showrunner. Unfortunately, it was one that was then hit by a technician strike, which meant that it was unfinished. Now, it's subsequently been re-released on video and then obviously DVD and so on and so forth by the BBC, with some of the missing parts being narrated by Tom Baker. But effectively, yes, this was a case of, for an awfully long time, this sat on a shelf in the BBC somewhere, and Douglas Adams thought, you know what, my publisher wants me to do a thing. Here, have this story. So there is an argument to be saying that the Dirk Gently character is supposed to be an unlikable version of the Doctor, and frankly, for everything I've ever heard about Tom Baker on a personal level, he is precisely that, a very unlikable version of the Doctor. I mean, let's not beat about the bush here. Tom Baker is a deeply, deeply awful human being.
Oh.
He's a very, very entertaining one. He's extremely good at the Doctor, but on a personal level, there has been something deeply nasty and unpleasant about some of his ways he's conducted his life.
Oh.
But as I say, he's still
Okay.
incredibly engaging as a performer. Really, really, really kind of brought the Doctor. He is the Doctor for so many people.
Yeah.
And this idea of Dirk Gently, he's never really been a character that's really kind of growled me, even within Douglas Adams' work. And as you said, the Stephen Mangan series, Stephen Mangan is a very good performer who really knows his way around comedy and is excellent at this sort of thing, but just never quite zinged. The writing was never quite there. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, they tried to they stripped it of a lot of the kind of over the top, wacky sci-fi element. There was always a huge part of the story. They made it almost this kind of realist kind of version of Dirk Gently, which is kind of the antithesis of what makes that story work and what makes that. It's meant to be insane. It's meant to be just stupidly over the top because it all ties in with his idea that all things are connected. I just found that original series, the Mangan series, just very dull.
When I was watching the trailer, I didn't fully understand what was going on because I don't know anything about these characters or this story, and all I saw was just like a whole heap of stuff just going on, and I found it like very kind of confusing. I didn't really get. I'm like, oh, it's a detective, but he's not a detective, and Elijah Wood's here, and there's a cat, and everything's connected, but what? So, I don't know. Maybe anti-vaxxers will like it because they'll finally get a link in between autism and vaccines. Fucking idiots. But now, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if there's a porno version of this called Dick Gently.
Quite possibly, there almost certainly will be if it's successful. And you know what? Here's a thought. This is science fiction homeopathy.
Oh, God.
Because there is a smaller, tiny microscopic grain of science fiction, but the show is therefore sci-fi because it retains a memory of being science fiction. Yeah, maybe
no.
not.
I'm not going to watch this show. I'm not going to watch it.
Okay. And finally, one last little bit of any other business. Now, this is one that almost doesn't fit with everything else we've been looking at, because obviously Comic-Con is mostly dealing with things that are interesting and fantastical and a little bit silly and strange. What we also have here that they gave a trailer for was the upcoming Oliver Stone movie, Snowden. Now this looks to be, I'm not sure if it's entirely just biopic, but it certainly has elements of that with regards to Edward Snowden, the guy who worked for the NSA and then released a whole bunch of papers and then went on the run. First of all, with regards to this, I would strongly urge that everyone who is interested in this at all out there, get out and watch Citizen 4. Now, Citizen 4 was the documentary done by a filmmaker whereby she sat in his hotel room in Hong Kong with Ewan McCaskill from The Guardian and Glenn Greenwald, and he detailed exactly what was going on with regards to the NSA's intelligence gathering. It's not particularly action-packed, but the revelations in it were explosive, to say the least, at the time. And this looks like it's going to be taking a lot of that lead. It looks like we've got Tom Wilkinson in the role there of Ewan McCaskill. You've got Zachary Quinto playing Glenn Greenwald, which again I think is a really good casting. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Shailene Woodley as Snowden and his girlfriend. I don't know what role it is though. Nick Cage is in this movie.
That's awesome. I love Nick Cage. I don't care what he's doing. It's awesome.
If you're at all familiar with Oliver Stone's filmmaking and some of his TV work, you will have an inkling already about kind of what place he's coming from with regards to this biopic. But it still looks like it could be an interesting one. I mean, I'm intrigued to see it. I think Citizen 4 is a better movie if you want to really know about the issues. But at the same time, this looks like it's an interesting story that's being told well.
Yeah, I think it could be interesting. Certainly a very good cast, so hopefully it all comes together.
Okay. Well, that I think we'll just about wrap it up for our coverage of Comic-Con. The next episode we're going to be releasing is going to be our mini episode of Ghostbusters. We went to see that on Monday night, and we decided to devote our entire review for Ghostbusters to a mini episode all by itself. So that will be being released in a few days' time. Meanwhile, Cav, where can we find you?
Hey, I can be read in Metro Magazine.
Shani.
You can find me on YouTube under PremaCat, also on Twitter.
And as always, you can get hold of us here in the There Will Be Geek podcast group and via Facebook in general. I think there's one final thing for us to say. We're finished!